Welcome back, guys. So I've been using the Anbernic RG405V for about 3 weeks now, and I think it's about time for a review. I know it has been a weird amount of time between unboxing video and review video, but I have been very busy the past few weeks, and I just haven't had the time to sit down and write a review and film a review. So I did try to make one, but it's kind of eluded me until now. But that's besides the point. Let's get into the review. So when discussing the specs, there really isn't anything that we haven't seen before from Anbernic and other manufacturers from devices around this price point. What I mean by that is that a lot of the stuff I'm about to say is very similar to stuff we've seen before. So it has a 4-inch 640 by 480 IPS display, the same T618 CPU that we've seen in so many devices over the past year, a Mali G52 GPU that we've also seen in so many of the last few devices I've reviewed, and 4 GB of RAM. It comes with 128 GB of internal storage, but you can add on 128 or a 256 GB SD card if you want to. That comes preloaded with games. It runs Android 12 and their own front end that you can enable in the control center. I'll touch on it later, but I actually do really like their game launcher now. It has a 5500 mAh battery, which they claim lasts for 9 hours, but obviously that depends on the game you're playing and whatever you're doing on the device. It's not always gonna last for 9 hours, but as I'll touch on later, it can get pretty close. It has Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Hall effect joysticks, and comes in 3 colors: wood grain, which is more of a finish than a color, transparent purple, and gray. I went with the wood grain just because I thought it looked nice, and I also did rush to buy this, so whatever their default color is, I just went with it. That's what happened to me on the last few devices. The last device I think that I actually chose the color was the Retro Pocket Flip. Most of the devices I've bought have just been the default color. That's because I'm rushing to buy it. I want to get it as soon as possible, and I forget to change the color. It's $137 on Embernic's website, which is honestly pretty good for a device like this. Most devices are around the $150 range. So for this amount of power and emulation, I'd say $137 is a pretty good price. But like I said before, there's really nothing new about these internals. We've seen the exact same internals in the RG405M, which is the last device that they made. The RG405M is the horizontal version of this. This is vertical, this is horizontal, and this is metal, so it was much more expensive. But it also has the exact same internals. It has the same internals as this, and like I said, so many other devices I've reviewed over the past year, 2 years, however long. Internals aside, I actually really like the hardware of this thing. It resembles an original Game Boy in its vertical setup, which I actually don't hate as much as I thought I would. I actually like it. My fingers sit below the screen, so there's no chance my hands will cover it in any way, and the placement of the controls makes it way more comfortable to hold for long periods of time, not to mention the grip-like bumps on the back make it super comfortable to hold. This all makes it bigger and bulkier, but there are compromises that need to be made if you don't want it to feel cramped. This is probably the one good thing about them having so many models, is that if one of them doesn't look right to you, they probably have another one that you would like better. Like we have the RG405V and RG405M. Both of these have the exact same internals, but you do have the option between these two. So it's not like you're missing out on too much by getting one over the other. It's just the form factor. So if you like one form factor better than the other, you can get that one. So yeah, if you don't like the horizontal form factor of the RG405M, you can get this one with the vertical form factor, which honestly I probably prefer more. Yeah, it's bigger, which makes it less pocketable, but that's not everything when it comes to these devices. Not all of them have to be pocketable. Talk to my Odin. That's not pocketable at all. This design is way more comfortable than the RG405M just because of its bulkiness and how the back isn't completely flat like the 405M, which makes it way more comfortable to hold for long periods of time. And I have pretty big hands, so I'd say it's not very easy for me to spend hours at a time playing games on a device that's as big as my hand. But this thing is big enough so where if I rest my 2 hands on it, it feels pretty comfortable. It's not the most amazing design ever, but in terms of Anbernic designs, I think it's pretty good. The D-pad is pretty standard for an Anbernic device, if a little less clicky. I have the 405M here. I think the D-pad on here feels a little more rounded, if a little shorter than the D-pad on there, but they feel pretty much the same. You probably wouldn't notice the difference unless you're reviewing them like I am. It definitely resembles the D-pad on the 405M, which isn't a bad thing, and I honestly like the placement on here a lot better, just because on the 405M, the D-pad was on the bottom, on the left side. Why? It's probably because they want to try and push 3D gaming a little more, but For a device that's set up like this, why would you put the D-pad on the bottom? I don't get it. Having the D-pad on the top instead of the bottom is really appreciated, especially on this Game Boy like form factor, because then I can just hold it with my fingers at the top, and while I'm playing a DS game, it's like really easy to press it. The face buttons are fine. I wish they were a bit more spaced apart, but it's fine. They're pretty clicky. They're not the clickiest I've ever felt, but compared to the 405M, they feel pretty much the same. I wish with this extra space they decided to space them apart more, just because it's not super comfortable having to rest my fingers on all of them. If I could, I would want just a teeny bit more space. They're not super clicky, but I haven't really been turned off by them in my extensive testing. They're kind of small too. I don't hate them. I actually think they're pretty serviceable, but if I were able to give some critiques, I'd say make them clickier, make them farther apart, space them farther apart, and they should be a little bigger. Like, these are a little tiny. I haven't had much experience with the joysticks, I must admit, because I have been playing mostly 2D games. But for the first like 5 hours where I played games on this device, I was mainly playing Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, which is a GameCube game, which means it mostly makes use of the joysticks. And for that 5 hours, they were fine. They have a pretty limited travel distance and are smaller than most joysticks I've seen, which is pretty annoying because I think they're the same joysticks as the RG405M, but on the 405M, they had much more travel distance because there was a little like indent for them to travel around. On this thing, that does not exist at all. It's just the shell here, and they hit against it really quickly, and it makes them not so fun to use for long play sessions. They're fine, but I wish they were bigger and had a better travel distance. I know making them bigger would make it less pocketable or like harder to travel around with, but honestly, I would take a little bit bigger joysticks, or like even a little bit of an indent in here to make it like make them able to travel more like you did on the RG405M, just so they can have a little bit of a bigger travel distance, because it feels like they really don't here. They get over here really quickly. They're fine though. If you're playing a game that primarily uses the joysticks, you should be fine. I just think there have been other devices from Anbernic and other companies that have used better joysticks. The triggers are nothing to write home about. They're not bad, but they're not remarkable. The L1 and R1 triggers are bigger than the L2 and R2 triggers, which makes sense, but my hands rest on the L2 and R2 triggers for some reason, which is really annoying because when you have shortcuts set to those buttons, if you press them accidentally, it'll just access them without you even meaning to. I wish they were moved over just a little bit on the shell, but it's fine regardless. They also allow for bigger grips on the back, so can't really complain. All the little critiques I have about the hardware mainly fade away while I'm playing games, aside from where my fingers rest, which makes it a very comfortable device to hold and play for long periods of time compared to other smaller devices. I have had bigger devices that are way easier to play for long periods of time just because they have big grips, like the Loki Max, which I've been using extensively over the past little while. And smaller devices that are less comfortable to hold, like say the Retroid Pocket 2S, are made better because they're much more pocketable, so I can just take it out whenever and play on it. So like, yes, I would prefer if some devices had bigger grips, but because this device is so big, I'm okay with it being a little bigger. If it was something like the Retroid Pocket 2S, I would be a little annoyed just because I feel like it's so small already. Why give it grips and make it bigger? It makes it more cumbersome to carry around. This thing is already gigantic. Add some grips on it. I don't care. It makes it better. The build quality is solid. It feels like it could survive several throws on my kitchen floor. And it also just feels nice to hold. It's not the most amazing thing I've ever held, but it is pretty comfortable compared to most of the devices I've used. Especially Android handhelds, this is probably one of the most comfortable and one of the ones I can hold for the longest periods of time. So unlike the internals of this thing, the hardware is pretty unique. We have seen vertical devices from Anbernic before. The RG35XX is one of my favorite Anbernic devices. But I feel like this is kind of in a league of its own, because while the RG35XX is small and very pretty and fun to use, the RG405V isn't really trying to be anything like that. Like, these things are brothers, they are similar, but they're not really trying to cater to the exact same audience. Like, I mean, the audience is people who buy portable emulators and stuff like that. But this is for people who want something to quickly throw in their bag and like take out on a whim, like the 2S or maybe like the 2 Plus from a while ago, the Retro Pocket 2 Plus. This is for people who want something more powerful and are okay with it being bigger. They're catering to 2 different markets, and so we've seen several, I know there's been more than just 35XX, we've seen several vertical handhelds from Anbernic before, but like I said, I feel like this stands in a league of its own in terms of build quality and how it performs. So yeah, I really like the hardware, but hardware is only one piece of the puzzle when it comes to using this thing. Let's talk about the software. Now, the base software on here that you turn this on and see is just bare bones Android 12. We've seen this before, we saw it on the RG405M, and it's nice, but I would prefer a launcher. And that's where the Anbernic launcher comes in. So I've known that Anbernic has had a launcher for a long while now. Hell, the RG505, I kind of miss this thing. I want to start using it again. Hell, the Anbernic RG505 from last year had a dedicated button for it on the side, but I hated it. I did not like the launcher. It was clunky and ugly, and honestly, finding a better launcher or just using bare bones Android was better than this. But since then, they've made some very big updates to it that make it a lot better to use. So yeah, I thought it looked very ugly, but I was in the control center changing like the brightness of a little while ago, and I saw the gaming mode option in the control center, and I turned it on, not knowing what it would do. I thought it was a power option. I honestly thought it would like increase the performance, but I went out of the control center and it turns out I turned on the launcher. Now there's no dedicated button for it this time around. They removed it, I guess, because it was useless. I mean, it was pointless. I know many people actually use the launcher, so it's probably smart on them to take it away. It was kind of a pointless button. I wish I could just change it for something else. Now that I'm actually using it, I actually really like it. So when I first clicked on the gaming mode thing and went into the launcher, it was pretty ugly. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, why am I in here again? It's a gross version of the launcher. Sorry, Anbernic, but it is pretty basic and ugly. But like I said, through some updates, they've changed how it looks, and now it looks a lot better. Well, they didn't change the default, but they gave a bunch more options to change how it looks. You have to press select while in the launcher, and that gives you a bunch of different styles and themes that you can use to change how the launcher looks. I've gone with style 1 and theme 2, which makes the thing look a lot better. I think it looks the cleanest and nicest out of all the options. Obviously, you can mix and match and do whatever you want, but this is my choice. This is my channel, and that's how I reviewed it. But I appreciate them giving us different options. If you bought an SD card with this thing, like I did, preloaded, each game category will default the ROM location to be on that SD card. If you have it already, I think it will default to the location on the internal storage, but I'm not entirely sure because I had to go into every system and click select and then go to game settings and add a different location for each game system. It wasn't that difficult, but I mean, it's pretty annoying to try and do. Something I wasn't able to figure out and still am not able to figure out is how to add box art for each of the different games that you add, because all of the games that I got from the SD card have box art. But yeah, I'm not sure how to add box art because now all that happens is the game title gets cut off and then there's just this ugly picture next to it, like N64, this is Banjo-Kazooie, and it looks ugly. It's not the end of the world. I mean, I honestly couldn't care less because it's just a UI like thing, but I wish I knew how to do it. I'm really glad they've improved their launcher. Honestly, it right now might be better than the Retroid launcher for me because the Retroid launcher is really good. Like, let's not doubt them there. But this, I think, looks cleaner in terms of how the games are displayed and how everything looks. I think it looks really nice. I haven't tried Daiji Show. I don't really plan on it right now. I'm trying to use default launchers, and I think this one looks really good for what it is. It looks really smooth and displays the games really well. Except for the box art. I'm not really sure how to do that. I feel like both the Retroid and Anbernic launchers is the same amount of complex to set up and get your ROMs working, but the Retroid launcher has very few options when it comes to how it looks. Like, it gives you options for light mode and dark mode, but the games are displayed like a Switch home screen format, which is nice in its own right, but I feel like the way this is displayed is just better, but that's just my opinion. They're both good and serve their purpose well. I just wanted to talk about it because I didn't know about this change up until right now, and I think it's a really important one, especially for people who don't like downloading other launchers. like me. Back in my Powkitty X28 review, I did a tier list of all the company's launchers and front ends, in which I put Retroid in S and Anbernic in B. I said that the launcher wasn't as good as Retroid at Eins, and that was true at the time. Now I feel like Anbernic can sit in A or even S just because they have improved their launcher quite a bit, and I am only playing ROMs on here. So I feel like a launcher like this really works out well, especially for how simple it is to set up. It can be pretty annoying to have to redirect all your ROM libraries, but it's not the end of the world. I've been doing it forever now, so I know how to do it, but I understand that it might be annoying for some other people. I probably should have talked about the battery when talking about hardware, but software draws battery, so we're talking about it now. So the battery is actually excellent, but it's probably not any better than the RG405M. Actually, that's not true. This thing has a 5500 milliamp hour battery, while the 405M has a 4500 milliamp hour battery. That's weird. I guess because this has more space here, they probably added a bigger battery. I don't know. I mean, I like bigger batteries. I'm not complaining. I just think it's kind of interesting. It actually lasts a really long time, and I'm not being like stupid when I say that. I'm being for real. I played several hours of DS games, and the battery barely went below 85%. And I know DS games, but like for real, that's pretty good battery life. I haven't really commented on this before because in every one of my reviews, especially for these lower end devices, I'm trying to push them to their limits. I'm trying to play GameCube games. I'm trying to play 3DS games. And usually the battery doesn't last for very long if you're pushing a device to its limits. But this time, I've been playing a lot of DS games. Not sure why. I just booted up Mario and Luigi Partners in Time and started playing that. And now I'm playing New Super Mario Bros. DS. So for some reason I'm playing DS games now. And what that's taught me is that the battery on here is actually really good for 2D games. So if you're playing anything like below N64 or below DS, you're gonna have a pretty good battery life. Maybe the 9-hour estimate isn't far off. I mean, I haven't played this thing consecutively for 9 hours, so I wouldn't know. But I think it's a pretty good estimate if you're playing lower end games. But we don't really need to spend so much time on the battery. Let's move on to something more interesting, emulation. Emulation is an interesting topic because, as I say every time I review one of these devices, there isn't much new that we haven't seen before. If you watched my video on the RG405M a few months ago, or the Powkitty X18S 2 years ago, you would know there's pretty much nothing new. We'll do some emulation testing a little later, but I do want to say that anything below DS and N64 is gonna run perfectly fine. DS and N64 are gonna run perfectly fine. And GameCube and 3DS are gonna struggle a little bit, depending on the games. You can rip the GameCube Dolphin for handheld. I almost said GameCube for handheld. Dolphin for handheld emulator that Retroid uses to put on here so you can downscale the game to like 480p, to like half its internal resolution. I'm not the kind of guy to do that just because I don't like doing that. I feel like I'd rather take a lower frame rate than a lower quality, but that's just me. But yeah, like I said, N64 and DS, anything below those are playable. GameCube and 3DS are playable with caveats. N64 and DS have been pretty much perfected on this chipset like a year ago, 2 years ago. They were fine on the Powkitty X18S and they're fine on here. They're like perfect on here. So there's nothing to worry about if all you want to play is DS or N64 games. What makes it difficult is the bigger 3D games and how they perform, like GameCube games and 3DS games. Dolphin, the emulator for GameCube and Wii games, has an official Android release that almost no one uses. It's like on the Google Play Store, but anyone that's like in the emulation scene knows that there are other forks of Dolphin that people have made that work better on lower end chipsets. The official Dolphin build comes pre-installed on here, but so does Dolphin MMJR2, which is a better version of Dolphin that you should probably use if you're on here. That's what I mean by caveats. You're gonna have to use different versions of Dolphin. I wouldn't even recommend trying to get Wii games on here. I mean, I've probably done that in the past, but like right now, no. You will also have to tweak the settings a bit if you want the games to run perfectly or like pretty well, but that comes with the territory now. Like I said, you'll have to tweak the settings to get some games working. It's not gonna work for every game, but if you at least try, you're probably gonna get a lot of games to run pretty well, if not perfectly. But there is some games that just will not run well. The same goes for 3DS. Citra, the 3DS emulator, has an official Android release, but most people just use Citra MMJ or Citra Enhanced as they work better on lower end Android devices. I personally stick with Dolphin MMJ R2 and Citra MMJ just because those have given me the best performance in the past, but you have a bunch of options. There's Dolphin MMJ-R, there's Dolphin MMJ-R2, there's Dolphin MMJ, there's Citra, like there's Citra. So yeah, I mostly stick with Dolphin MMJ R2 and Citra MMJ, unless I'm using a device powerful enough to run the official releases well, which is almost never. I mean, the Odin doesn't even do that, so. All right, enough yapping. Let's get into some emulation testing. Whoops. So it's nothing new. We've seen the exact same performance out of every device I've reviewed. Not every, I don't know why I said every, a lot of devices I've used over the past 2 years. But hey, it's nice to be reassured. GameCube and 3DS, like I expected, are pretty hit or miss. Using the unofficial builds can help, but don't buy this thing expecting to play your entire 3DS or GameCube library. It is kind of disappointing just because we've been using this exact same chipset for the past 2 years, and seeing that GameCube performance hasn't really improved is pretty disappointing. And 3DS performance. And I just want to be done with it already. I want something new that's not bad. The RGB 10 Max 3 Pro had something new, and that has bad software, so I can't tell if it's good or not. But I want a new chipset. The Dimensity 1200 is really promising, but I don't know how expensive that is. I mean, I already did this rant a few months ago in my Retroid Pocket Flip review, so I'll keep this short. But what I will say is that I want a new chipset, I want something more powerful, and I want to stop seeing these devices come out every few months with the same exact internals, just a different, like a little cheaper, and with a different design. I want something new. I'm sick of this chipset and how many devices have come out with it. It is nice that pretty much anything under GameCube and 3DS have been perfected, but GameCube and 3DS are, well, at least GameCube is. GameCube is big in nostalgia right now, so if you got GameCube working well, that would mean a lot. 3DS still got a few years. You can worry about that later. Talking about emulation a little bit more, this display is perfect for DS games, and setting Drastic, the default DS emulator, to have a swap screen button so only one screen is shown at a time makes it really nice to play DS games. And 3DS games are nice too, but the top screen is a little wide, so there are black bars at the top and bottom. Emulation is nothing new, but this device is really fun to play emulators on, which is what I'm sure 99.9% of people buying this is gonna do, is what they're gonna do with this thing, if not 100%. Which is why I'm glad that the launcher is really good now, because if it wasn't, that'd be pretty annoying. I hate navigating Android, just like basic Android. It's so annoying. So, to wrap this all up, I actually really like it. Would you guys mind if I did the review, the rest of it like this? I'm getting kind of tired. But I don't have any more B-roll marks, so I have to sit up. What if I just hold this here and then talk? Can you hear me? Can you even hear me? What if I just hold it like that? You can watch the Mario dance around on here, and then editing me is gonna be so annoyed right now. Fine. So to wrap this all up, I actually really like this thing. I only really bought it because everyone else was reviewing it, and I also got FOMO of it. Everyone else was buying it, and I was like, I need to buy it and make a review on it. Everyone wants to see it. Watch this review flop. But I actually, like I said, I do like this thing. Also, I needed something to make videos on, so I bought it. And I was like, great, now I have content. But I wasn't really expecting to like this thing. I honestly thought it would be like my Retroid Pocket Flip review, where I could say I'm disappointed. But I'm not. I honestly thought I would find it boring. Like, yeah, it's big, but it's the same internals as like 90% of the devices I've reviewed over the past 2 years. So I wasn't really expecting to find anything new or anything fun about it, and I'm glad to say I was wrong. This thing was a pleasant surprise, and I've been using it for the past 3 weeks joyfully. I've liked using it. It was really fun. Obviously, the large vertical form factor of this device is not for everybody, but I do find it very comfortable, and honestly, compared to like 90% of the devices I've used over the past 2 years with this chipset, this has been my favorite just because it's kind of big, and like it's like the RG403V11, whatever that one is. Obviously, the large vertical form factor isn't for everybody, but I find it very comfortable, and it's not too heavy, so holding it for long periods of time does not become uncomfortable. It's a great device for what it is. $140 may be a little steep, but compared to the RG405M being like $180, I think this is pretty worth it. This is metal, so it's like easier to understand why it's so expensive, but like adding $40 is a little weird just for the metal. So yeah, the price may be a little steep, but that's what all of these devices are going for nowadays, so it's kind of hard to judge this device specifically, especially when it's $10 less than most devices. I feel like most are going for like 150, whereas this is 140, so good on them. 137, so it's like $13 less. I really like this thing. I don't really know if I'm gonna keep using it after this review, just because for some reason, after I review a device, I have a tendency to just put it away in a drawer and never touch it again. until a year later, where I take out the RG405 and decide I want to start using it again. So yeah, I like it. What do you guys think? Do you like it? Do you already have one? Have you bought one? Are you not buying one? Are you buying a different device over this one? Do you think the form factor is ugly and that I'm wrong? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll see you guys later. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.